key idea is this. You need to have a doing in the spirit before you have a knowing. In other words, you need to contact that higher self to say, why I'm a human being, not a human doing. In other words, you need to be where you're supposed to be. You need to be in a position where you're supposed to be, and then the things just unfold.
Yes.
And this is why all these things have happened to me. People say that it's impossible all these things could happen to one person. I say, well, it happens because I hear and do. Literally, you know, the sister of Moses went before the council of the people back in the ancient times and said, you know, are we and Aaron not only prophets? And the voice of God spoke from the pillar of fire and said, there is not a man on earth, hand to hand, eye to eye, mouth to mouth, does not speak as another man speaks to his brother. That's the kind of relationship I have with God. I literally can talk and hear him instantly like that. Now people need to know, I'm not any better than anyone else, and I am. If you knew my whole history, you'd say, why is this man called to do this? I'm called to do this because I've seen the face of evil. I've seen it not only in myself, I've seen it in others. I have chosen light, not to be a follower of darkness. And I've had numerous opportunities. I've had opportunities to become a very brother, a Knight of Malta, as earlier this year. I've had all kinds of threats. I've had the Pindar come directly to me to say, you know, to be his replacement as the CEO of Earth Inc. and the Druidic Council. And there's a lot of high-level Masons say, well, I haven't even heard of that, because they think they're the ascended ones. They have no idea what they're serving. They have no idea. They need to repent right now, and as I say, if we can pray, and this is something we have to do, and the most powerful thing we have is, I call it forgive. The word forgive means to create. To forgive means we need to pray for George Soros, who's behind the Blackstone Group in 9/11, and the current derivatives crisis that's bringing the world down to a world and regional banks. And trade zones that are going to cause the death of millions and set the groundwork afoot for a pandemic. Because when starvation occurs, the population get weakened, and it's the perfect groundwork or cover for a pandemic, which they've already weaponized.
Has that already been released or not released?
There are several avenues by which it can happen. Back in, how long ago was it now? It is, it's back in back in about 1995, I was praying, and I was told by the angel that I was supposed to go to Europe. I said, well, where? And the Lord said, you're going to go to Zurich. I said, oh, I don't know anybody in Zurich. So I had some friends that were Canadians that actually were in Halifax, Nova Scotia at the time, and they had gone they'd gone back to Austria, to Lake Constance. And I said, well, I'll contact them, the Santoses. And I said, you know, do you guys know Zurich? Oh yeah, we lived there for a while, we love it. I said, well, and so I started going through and Googling, you know, checking on things, trying to find out which organization. The Lord said, you're supposed to contact these people here, Human Life International. Because I speak to God literally, and he tells me. I said, so I contacted him. I call this guy, he calls me back from Zurich in a very German accent, and he says, wonderful, we'd love to have you come over and speak to our board. So we arrange tickets, we go and visit our friends in Austria, and we go over to Zurich, and I told them that what I was told, you know, literally told to tell them about was the cybernetic super soldier program, human genetic engineering, and the chimeric monstrosities they're making in underground facilities. And to speak against abortion and euthanasia and selected abortions, which are 93% of the abortions on earth are female. Okay? And so after 2.5 hours of me speaking to a board of scientists, giant boardroom, you know, 24 doctors and scientists, whatever, that are the International Board of HLI, they said, now you sit down, doctor, we give you things. And they went in another room and brought this stack, about a foot, of documents. I said, well, what is this? They said, you stay here, and, you know, give me some more water and whatever. And they lectured to me for 2 hours. And they had documents there of the weaponization of the avian flu, smuggled out of the World Health Organization in Basel. Actual documents, okay, that they had got gene bioengines, and they'd actually resurrected the corpses of people that died of the H1N1 back in 1918. That they were paid for by the Rothschilds. All this, I'm in shock. These guys are telling me this stuff. I'm thinking, why am I in Zurich? And after they finished that, which was about 6 inches, then they gave me documents that they had these plasmid vaccines that were injected every month, and they were drawing blood from women in sub-Saharan Africa, testing to see if they create antibodies against human chorionic gonadotropin to sterilize them. And I had another 4 inches of documents that showed that the AIDS was completely weaponized by cross genetically engineering the Visna virus with other viruses, and they gave me the actual documents. So I'm sitting there kind of freaked out, wondering. And of course, we went to dinner afterward with these doctors. They said, "Now you bring all this." I brought it all back with me, of course, to North America. But the thing is, back in you can see how God puts me in all these positions. Back in 1974, I had finished a year of medical school, and I had someone try to recruit me from a U.S. government agency to take a year off medical school and go to Uganda for the Special Virus Project. Because I had worked, before I went into medicine, I was working on my honors degree and had finished my PhD research project in 5 months, although I didn't write the thesis, for Dr. Robert Brown, who was one of the doctors working on the T-virus project in Bethesda. So I was already a bioweaponeer, okay?
And you turned that down?
I turned it down. I told him there's no way I was going to do it. But I had recalled this from 74 to 1997 when they gave me all these documents, and here it was. I was also the whistleblower that blew the whistle that the factor VIII that was used for hemophiliacs, I was the main whistleblower for the Canadian government and those lawsuits that got to all these doctors, that they were getting it and combining all these factor VIIIs, because I had a pile of hemophiliacs when I was practicing in Calgary, that were dying of AIDS specifically because they gave them purposely contaminated factor VIII.
Yes.
Okay? And all these things, all my experiences through my life were laid out so that I would be what I am now, a beaten piece of steel like a samurai sword, hardened enough for the truth and willing to tell the truth, to tell people that you need to make the right decision. You cannot believe your pastor, your rabbi, your Buddhist master, your ascended masters, your ET contactees. You need to contact yourself, the Spirit of the Most High God. You need to analyze what's going on foreign policy and money. For example, money, as Socrates said, is only a means of exchange. Why are we willing to do spending cuts that'll starve people? Why are we going to bail out $700 billion to banksters that are gambling in the future, that are going to guarantee that we're going to have a crash and a death of civilization? Why? And they know that starvation leads to war, pestilence, and the crash of civilization, and it's very fragile. And they're purposely bringing this about. This is the start, this phase right now with the collapse of the banks is the start toward world government, World Bank, regional currencies, chipping the population, and they're ready, probably by next year. I've already calculated and been told by my sources, both natural and classified as well as supernatural, there's about a 30% chance of an avian pandemic this year, and a 70% chance next year, and a 100% chance the year after.
When you say this year, you mean in the next 12 months?
No, between now and the end of December.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's okay.
Very disturbing, okay? But we're talking about going up to 70%, which means next year we have a very grave possibility of a thermonuclear attack, at least on the Bashar reactor and 450 targets, and a counter-response, which is going to release a radiation cloud and cut off the oil to the Strait of Hormuz. Now, I was taken in 1988, one of my very first visions I was taken. So I was taken up high above Saudi Arabia in the spirit, and I actually looked down and I could see the carrier groups all assembling. This is 1988, 20 years ago, and I looked down and the angel told me, he says, watch this place, because this is where it will all start, the Strait of Hormuz.
And how close are we to that now, potentially?
We are so close we can feel the breath of the dragon. People that need to pull back, and none of these people that call themselves candidates for president that are in the two leading parties are safe. Neither one. Obama is backed by Zbigniew Brzezinski, that wrote the Grand Chessboard, that was the head of the Security Council, that was one of the CFR members of Georgetown University. He is personally determined to directly confront with thermonuclear and other weapons Russia.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
We have Joe Biden, who released this information just in the last few weeks. This guy is very clever, but very evil. And he's directly involved with the cover-up of the Israeli Purdue OxyContin scam, where there's a Purdue Pharma plant in Israel distributing billions of dollars of illegal OxyContin in America. And we have the proof of it, okay? This is not conjecture.
Yep.
Then we've got McCain, who spent 5.5 years under the control of a Russian mind control scientist, the top Russian mind control scientist. And I heard him on the debate, and I think he won the debate against Obama, because Obama, if he's not reading a teleprompter, is not that smart. McCain was sharper, and he showed more presidential, but McCain is determined that he's going to invade, and as well as Obama, he's going to invade Pakistan and get the Waziristani nukes. He's going to expand NATO directly on the back doorstep of the Russians. It's going to piss off the Russians, and the Russians have got some very, very nasty weapons.
Yeah, and they're pissed off already.
And they're very pissed off, and this is and they personally don't want to do this. They'd much rather negotiate and get richer, right?
Sure.
The Russians are not interested in this, but the people behind the American government, the satanic Luciferian reptilians, they're absolutely determined to bring this agenda toward a final culmination of a thermonuclear war.
Right.
Okay, they're determined to do it.
That's with Russia.
And they're pulling Russia, as it says in Ezekiel 38 and 39, I shall pull you with hooks in your jaw, O Rosh, chief prince Gog of Meshech, Tubal, and Rosh. And you know what that is? Gog is the name of a Hebrew man. Rosh, Russia. Meshech, Moscow, Tobolsk. Okay. This is Russia. They've armed to the teeth all these nations. They got the S-300 anti-aircraft system. They got the Iran hypersonic cruise missile. They got EMP weapons. And they've armed the teeth of the Syria and Iran. And they're building the largest outside of Russia naval base right now in Syria.
Yeah, and they're poking the bear with a sharp stick.
They're poking the bear with a sharp stick. So what we've got to do is people need to get in a panic here. It's not a matter of voting for Palin and McCain or voting for Obama. Either alternative guarantees a thermonuclear war.
Yeah. Is this election going to happen to schedule, or could something happen to it?
It really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay. Even if it's delayed 6 months, it doesn't matter if McCain gets in there and Palin. The thing that I'm particularly concerned about is someone like McCain, if he lives long enough, which I'm very concerned about, because he's had a third recurrence of a melanoma, he needs to have lymphatic spread. And I know I do consulting, helping people integrate with treatments for cancer all around the world. Unless he's getting some of the new classified anti-cancer therapies, or some of the people that I know in Europe or elsewhere, like Dr. Tullio Simoncini and Dr. Munoz and Tijuana and other places where you get IPT and so on, he's a dead man. This cancer or another cancer is going to come back and kill him, and he'll probably die in his term. And we're not talking about a 30% chance. We're probably talking 80% chance in the first 2 years of his term, if he does become president, that President Palin will take over.
With what consequences?
Well, President Palin doesn't, I don't think has the, to me, she's pro-life, which is positive for a lot of the Christian rights. She's going to drag a lot of votes that way. But in terms of her ability to have a rational judgment with the extreme religious background that she has, is going to be very disturbing. Now, I'm for her pro-life issue, and I'm for the fact that she's got spirituality, but when you have religion and it's clouded that Israel could do no wrong, that's freaking dangerous.
And she says that Iraq is God's war.
Right, yeah, now that's really dangerous. And you can't say Israel can do no wrong when the whole nation of Israel are sabotaging Luciferian Satanist Jews, okay, who do not worship the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and have nothing to do with what she thinks and what they laugh at her and think that this Christian fool is going to back us no matter what and allow us to attack Iran
and she's saying,
or Russia.
And she's playing straight into their hands.
Right, she's playing right into their hands, and of course they're using her as a card to manipulate. Now on the other hand, we got Obama, and there's a trail of strange things going on behind him.
And you know this because
I have so many contacts you would not believe it. I would spend a lot of time on Obama is if you want to call him a messianic figure. This is a very dangerous man. Okay. In fact, of all of the options we have, Obama is the most dangerous of all of them.
Okay, so that's the most worst version.
He's the most worst version. Even Biden would be better. Biden might actually have a clue, even though he's a bit of a criminal.
But our understanding is that Biden probably won't make it to the election.
Is it possible that Hillary could be back on the ticket somehow?
It's possible. It's possible. The thing is that Hillary, other than Obama, is the most scary individual I've ever met. She is very brilliant, incredibly evil, and her family, the Rodhams, have been Luciferic Satanists for hundreds, if not thousands of years. She has a lot of stuff attached to her.
So what's the way out of all of that?
The way out of it is just to get the population to go up, to pray for the leaders, to get the people woke up. If we just get a tiny minority of the body of mankind to wake up to the truth of this, whether they think they're atheists or agnostics or Jews or Christians, they got to stop being Armageddonites. They got to stop being Sabbatean Jews. They got to stop being religious, thinking, oh well, it's just karma being worked out in their Buddhism, right? They got to stop all that foolishness and pick up their scepter and say, we craft the future. We're going to determine whether or not mankind is going to survive what's coming. And they got to start making decisions. They got to start saying, hey, we're not going to participate with a country that's going to have a thermonuclear war with Iran. We're not going to as John, as Carlin said, if you vote for one of these blankety blank guys or this blankety blank guy, you can't complain when either one of them starts a thermonuclear war.
Okay, but actually people are left with that choice. Now,
They aren't. They can actually, the thing is that I think we need to transcend politics. We need to transcend religion. We need to stop thinking that if we make the right decision on the right leader, we've solved the problem.
Mm-hmm.
The transformation is not at the leadership level of the White House.
absolutely.
It's not even at the Capitol building of the state. It's not even at the town council. It's in us. We have to decide that we're no longer going to participate in these things. We're not going to participate in churches and pastors or politicians doing these things. We're not going to participate in a financial collapse that's going to starve millions and start a pandemic. We're not going to participate in doing those things.
Okay, well, but nuts and bolts, and on a spiritual level, that their choice is clear, I would say.
Yeah, but make hard decisions. See, those decisions are so hard that most people don't want to swallow that. So they want to either attack me or any other messenger giving this message. Sure. They don't want to make the tough choices to say, hey, I'm not going to participate with what they plan on doing. I'm going to make certain that I'm not going to vote. Give an example. What happens if nobody went out to vote? What if everybody said, hey, we know both these guys, with either party are going to support the $700 billion bailout? Because in the next 2 weeks, long before the election, they're going to sign this damn thing. And if they sign it, they guarantee you call it the controlled demolition of the economy of the world. And the devolution to the mark of the beast, which is coming. I walked personally through the array. And either party is going to guarantee that. Now, whether it's the Obama and his messianic vision, or it's McCain and Sarah Palin with her, her Armageddonite vision, it doesn't matter. The devil will move forward like a snake, pushing itself on its own belly.
Okay, we've also gotten the information about October, and I'm sure you've heard Half Past Human.
Yes, I can tell you what, yeah.
We have 13 different, actually 14 now, different data points.
October, you're right. You're correct.
Somewhere lined up in October.
Somewhere between the 7th and 15th of October, and I get the same feeling.
Right.
A lot of time I don't know it because I get what I call go to bed at night, wake up in cold sweats, get visions, see people crying, I see starvation, I see privation, I see darkness, a lot of very bad visions, very jumbled up. And, and I can't tell you what it is specifically, but I can tell you what it makes sense to me if I just take my intellectual viewpoint. I think we're going to have a financial crash.
Okay.
I think the financial crash is going to be so severe and so painful that the grocery store shelves are going to be completely emptied in the very, very near future. I mean, and it can only last for maybe a few weeks, but it's going to frighten people so badly that no matter what the government presents to them in terms of world government, regional currencies, Amero, whatever, they're going to take it.
Right.
And then when they can go back and buy their latte and go to the movie theater and put gas in their car at a reasonable price, they're going to say, thank God we got this.
Right.
But I can tell you right now, what I see is empty shelves.
And martial law.
And martial law. But martial law, remember now, martial law will be almost like a theater. It'll be on, they brought back an entire division. I posted up the article on clay and iron today. So if you go to clayandiron.com, I posted up that article. They brought an entire division back to America to be permanently stationed for civil defense inside the United States. That's 650,000 battle-hardened troops with heavy artillery and weapons to be able to control civilian populations. They don't need to be in the whole country. The media is on that screen there. I call it Satan Vision. Okay, on that box. What they need to do is they need to frighten people to accepting whatever the agenda is.
Yep.
So they need a thing like a Katrina thing in one or another city or 2 or 3 cities. Maybe they need an event like what they've been working on, this idea of blowing up dirty bombs and nukes in 2 or 3 cities. I got the long and the short list. On both the long and the short list, and I happen to be living very near to one of those, the very top of both lists is Los Angeles. They're number 1.
I think so too.
Chicago, Detroit, those are, all those 3 cities are on both long and short lists, okay?
It feels to us that there's a violent event coming up.
Yes, there's a very violent event coming up, and I see a financial collapse, and I see, at the very latest, by next year, a thermonuclear explosion in a U.S. city, 1 or more cities, and civil war in America, okay? And then a period of false peace after that, and a period of, and I'm setting up this temple thing and kind of scaring the crap out of the population of the planet. And then I see this time period of 1200 literally being marched over. Because remember now, this is a religious ceremony. You see, the Bible isn't just a thing for the Jews or for the Christians. It's a Luciferic ceremony. And they're marching through this as a clock, as an anti-type to what they see happening. so that the globalists and the Illuminati use it almost as a religious ceremony to kind of snub the face of the creator of the universe and say, no, we're God. So that's why this timepiece is being marched out on Israel. Okay? And when people grasp that, and the reason why I'm calling out today, because I don't know who he is, but there's another witness. Okay? He's a witness of Yehuda, the witness of Judah. He's a Torah Jew who does know this. And the greatest prophecy that was ever given by Yeshua HaMashiach was a prodigal son. That Ephraim, which is the 10 tribes, would be hauled away, scattered over the earth with the Assyrians, and that they would return, and they would bring on their shoulders literally the ability to know and how to protect the Jews on earth, because the Holocaust is coming, Jews. You got to know that there is a Holocaust coming to kill every Jew on earth, Sabbatean and non. And the reason is they have to expunge the earth of any knowledge of a creator God. It doesn't matter if you're a Buddhist or you're a native Hopi or whatever, they've got to get rid of them because there's a portion of truth that was given specifically by the Creator to the Jews that other peoples did not receive in fullness. Just like there's the Bible code in the Bible. Why is that code in the Bible? Why is it not in some Hopi things or some tablets from some other civilization? It was there because it was set up as an object lesson to ask of the entirety of mankind, how will you deal with Israel? How will you deal with it? As it says in Jeremiah, there'll be a fire pot burning all the nations around it. They're literally setting a detonator to blow up the earth. And they have weapons that can. And they got antimatter weapons that can turn the earth into a shards like like one of these planets that died, in the ancient conflicts that they talk about. That was destroyed and created the asteroid belt between Mars and Earth.
Yeah.
Okay?
Oh, yeah.
They have those weapons now. They have things that you just can't imagine that could be done that could blow the earth literally into tiny fragments. Okay? But whether we'll survive is not a geopolitical thing of who we vote for, or whether or not we're going to kind of will our minds like some of the people figure if we just will it, it's all going to happen. It's going to require some painful decisions on our part to say, hey, we're going to march on every city capital of every city. We're going to march in every church to throw down their dogma, which is they am God. They're not God. They have to hear the voice of the Creator, whatever religion they are, whatever spirituality, whatever agnosticism. If they don't, they're not going to survive because this earth is marked for judgment. It's the end of the road. And if they don't turn back now, and that means all those ones who are called as prophets of every race and tongue and people, you need to come out as a grand chorus and sing the song as it says in the Bible, the Song of Moses. You need to sing the song of humanity that is a spiritual body that knows these things. They intuitively know it. When I talked to John Boncourt, whose name was Splitting the Sky, there was a Mohawk prophecy given, and he said this on air just this week. He said there was a prophecy given, untold centuries ago, that a great, a young Mohawk would come and give a prophetic warning to the peoples of earth. Well, he has better than any other person, better than Phil Berg or anyone else that I've heard, put the financial trail of blood money behind 9/11 together. People need to grasp this, that if they, here's mine, that if we don't get back in touch with spirit instead of religion, we're going to all die killing each other for religion and for different financial agendas, or we're going to save the planet because of carbon dioxide, which is a lie. We're polluting ourselves to death, so we won't even be able to reproduce 2 generations from now. And it's all by design. It's designed that even if we didn't have a pestilence or a nuclear war or whatever, that life on this planet is soon going to die. We're a dying planet. And if you're visiting here as an archaeologist from another distant time and another space to visit Earth, you'd say, these people are suicidal. They killed their prophets, just like it says in the Bible, between the brazen laver and the Holy of Holies. I'm called to speak as Moses and as Elijah to blow the trumpet, which I've done on my show. And God has given me a voice to speak to them and warn them. We are at the time of the end. That's why my other website's called Clay and Iron. They need to know, come out of Babylon, which means come out of confusion, come out of religion, come back in relationship, stop believing lies. And the first lie is what you are. You're not a biological machine. You're not an advanced piece of slime that's evolved. You're an infinite being that has the right to choose to have life and to live it abundantly for thousands of years, literally, and have contact with advanced civilizations and to survive and to thrive. But if you don't choose life today, just like Moses when he set the peoples between Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim, we as a civilization will die.
Okay. Now, stepping back into the Black Ops world, you will know that we've been contacted by time-traveling future humans with a message.
Right.
And it'd be interesting to hear your take on this, but our understanding is that there are alternative timelines. Not all of them are catastrophic.
Right,
We
I know
do
that. Yeah,
have
that's right.
do have choices.
Sure we do.
It's not a done deal.
Oh, okay, absolutely.
And what do you know of those contacts, those messages, and what opportunities we have, and how those messages have been acted upon by the people who've received them?
Firstly, the way I'd answer that is that the universe is stranger than even they can imagine. In other words, when you're dealing with people, let's say that we posit that there are alternative timelines and these people have traveled back from multiple timelines. If we think of I call it the universe as a one-I voice. In other words, there's a unification of all that it is, because what the universe is not energy portrayed through advanced equations in a cybernetic world. It is literally the passage of spirit through a montage of images. And when you start to understand that, there is only one. In other words, there's not maybe multiple possible futures, but there's only one real future.
Okay.
Okay?
Right.
But we do have a choice, because I say we forgive. We actually are creating whichever timeline we're going to get, whichever rail we're going to get on.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would be purposeless to even have human beings, because we'd just be automatons, because the future is already set in stone, and whatever's going to happen would happen.
Exactly. Yep.
And we are. We are actually in the image of the Creator.
Yes.
We are actually if you want to call it the incarnation of the I Am that said, let there be light in the universe, as human beings in this world. And there's other beings of other types that are across the cosmos that are incarnations of the same I Am. And they've come to the knowledge that they are and have that responsibility to be, as in a sense, midwives to Earth. Well,
Yes.
in the birthing room of this civilization. We're literally in the birthing room
Yes.
now.
But what do you know and what have you heard of those messages from future humans who presumably are altruistically trying to help in some way, because they're looking back through their own history saying, don't do that stuff because this happened to us, or some other message? What do you know about this?
You have to use a great deal of discernment, because one of the things about alternative timelines in terms of an actual being coming back from a timeline is you have to think, is this inserted ideas? Because the very nature of the universe is that there is one timeline that you follow. There may be alternatives that you have a choice of, but you have to use discernment. You got to remember that, in a sense, we live in a matrix. We live in a cybernetic world that to a great extent is the manifestation of a higher dimensional reality of being that transcends our physical body. For example, I try to tell people this repeatedly, is that your mind, i.e., which is equal to your soul, is not physical. It doesn't exist in this plane. So when people talk about psychic phenomena and doppelgangers and other things, what they're really referring to is something that's just the very nature of what we are. Our physical mind doesn't exist in this level, okay? The physical mind is just a chemical computer. It's a bunch of neurons connected that are connected to our nuclei in our eyes and in our physical senses. But our physical brain is not what we are. It's connected through the cord of living waters to our physical brain. And so if we don't understand what kind of a being we are, we won't make correct decisions. So part of this idea of timelines or even incarnation, for example, if you talk to people about incarnation, they'll say, well, 40% of the incarnations are supposedly from the future. Or they're
Yes.
even non-human beings, okay?
Yes, yep. By that.
But the way I tell people is, I said, maybe you're just kind of picking up almost like a radio tuned into a certain frequency, certain object lessons or spiritual things, so that you can understand this, something you're supposed to learn or remember in this lifetime. In other words, you're not becoming, does that make sense? So that's right, Chris? Yeah. So that's why I see this as being a misinterpretation of it, okay? So this idea that there's alternative timelines, I think, is a deception. A very, very significant deception, because it says that the world is a mechanistic Cartesian world that's created by energetics, and we're just kind of like leaves that are pushed along by energy, space, and time, and we really don't have any choices to our future. In fact, we actually are the gods of this world. But I'm not talking about replacing the Creator God. I mean hearing the voice and doing the will. And that's a very different thing. So in other words, reality is created on this energetic plane by spirit. It's not the other way around.
Of course.
And that's the problem. And so when you hear people saying that they've had physical contact, the deception is very, very powerful. We're right here now with mankind, as they said in the eschaton, that transcends time and space, to make a decision for life. Whether this civilization is going to survive what's coming or it's going to be annihilated. And we're very close to that. And we can see the object list of Israel is the final crux. And just look at the foreign policy. Look at the financial policy. Look at all of these things. The two groups that are running the world right now, that are running, literally driving it into the ground, are the Teutonic Knights, the Hanseatic League, right, that believe that they're bloodline descendants of Yeshua HaMashiach, and all the kings and queens of Europe and all the czars of Russia, the Caesars, believe they're bloodline descendants of Jesus Christ and King David. Why? That's bizarre. Why? But it's the truth. You can talk to Jordan Maxwell and others and find it out, and Michael Tessari and others. Why would that be? And then the other group are the Sabbateans, right? The Sabbateans that are basically Satanists. These are, and they'll say, even though they're, they'll say, well, we're communist Israelis because they had the Russians there at the inception of the Israeli state. They're not. They believe they're God. There is no God. They're trying to say, look, just like Bill Maher in his movie Religious, obviously he's a Kabbalist. He believes in the Kabbalah, in the highest levels of the Kabbalah. If you go in deep into Masonry, are entirely, you go right back to the Temple of Solomon. They're completely, they'll look Jewish, but they're not. They're satanic. They go right back to Atlantis and before. These were adopted into it and invaded into it at the time of Solomon. That's why they'll say they'll elevate Solomon as a great leader. No, he allowed the body of the truth of ancient Israel to be infected by this monstrosity.
Going back to what you were saying about the reality or otherwise of these alternative timelines, what I hear you saying is it's almost like an intellectual trick, because it doesn't really count, because what's in front of us is what's in front of us, and that's our real responsibility. And anything else is it's almost like it's not relevant whether it's, in inverted commas, real or not, because it depends what you mean by real. And the really real situation is here and now.
Exactly.
And
also might
that's
give
the
you
only thing that matters.
It might give you a false decision tree to base your ideas on, and therefore steer you in a direction of wasting intention, which is the first thing, wasting action, and wasting effort. For example, people think there's going to be a difference if we elect McCain, Palin, or Obama, Biden. I don't think it makes a difference. It might make a difference if you had somebody like Cynthia McKinney or Chuck Baldwin, but how likely are they to be elected president?
It's not going to happen.
Not going to happen. The problem with Cynthia McKinney is a black woman. She's brilliant, she's tough, she's calling for a 9/11 investigation. This woman would make an absolutely amazing president, okay? But how likely is it for her to get in there? And the problem is they also may come with a baggage, with what we call environmental baggage, which is we've got to reduce the world's oxygen, carbon dioxide output. That's crazy. It's not science, okay? I was an oceanographer. I did work with Greenpeace. The carbon dioxide is what makes the plants, including the phytoplankton in the upper 10 meters of the benthic layer of the oceans, produce all the oxygen. And our oxygen level now is down from what it was in ancient, Mesozoic era, from 30% down to what it is now. So, I think what it is has to stop. We have to stop looking for an external Messiah, where all these so-called great religions, like for example, Mr. Ahmadinejad thinks he's going to see the Imam Mahdi, or the Christians think they're going to see a Messiah come in the clouds, where there's, which is ridiculous.
And there are a bunch of people who think the ETs will save us.
Right, they think the ETs. And you see, this ET save us stuff is crazy stuff too. The fact is, what's going to save us is us. It's like the inverse of Pogo's statement there, I've seen the enemy and the enemy is us. I've seen the Messiah and the Messiah is us.
Very good.
I hope it kind of gets people to kind of drop their old paradigms. I hope I get them to like Marshall McLuhan, tune in and drop out. In other words, drop out of false lies, whether it's politics or religion or thinking these other things are a solution. Become personally responsible. Become public and interact with other people. Don't think that by default, if you don't say anything about it, you're not responsible for the death of 15 to 32 million Iranians and a radiation cloud that circulates the planet and destroys your own health. the sins of omission are greater than the sins of commission.
Yes, and it's
And
all
the sins of silence are greater than the sins
Yeah.
of action.
Yes, I second that. And this is where we ask for everyone to take part.
and it's all got something to do with you.
Right, absolutely. I hope it transforms some hearts, as Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus said, that the message of the kingdom is now, which means it's now as soon as you tend to Shema, to hear and do the will of the Creator God of the universe, and not to think that you can set external commandments and create a peace on earth. What you'll do is you'll create pieces of earth.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
Is there any final soundbite that is there anything that you haven't said that you want to leave these people with right now? Because this is the chance.
Well, what I would say is, firstly, prepare for a series of spasms and disasters.
When
Be
you mean
prepared.
prepare, you mean physically, practically, logistically prepare?
Spiritually prepare first, but physically prepare. Have your food and water. Have your civil defense. We have a whole series of civil defense things. I'm actually working with Gordon Peterson in Homeland Security to stop aircraft bringing in pandemic viruses. Prepare to have things to protect yourself from pandemic avian flu, which we have on our website, NutriMedical. Prepare yourself to be home quarantined for anywhere from 6 weeks to 2 months or more.
Anywhere
Be
in the
prepared
world
for
or here in America?
Anywhere
Okay.
on the planet. Be prepared for food shortages on a massive scale, starting as early as this fall. Be prepared to know how to have, in other words, I don't tell people to join the militia. I tell people to start shooting clubs. I believe that we need to exert our Second Amendment right, not so that we can go and start shooting fellow Americans, but we can protect ourselves if things get out of hand. I worked with federal agents at the Federal Center in Denver, and they did simulations and actually were stockpiling pallets of gold bullion, gold coins, and bales of heroin to interact with gangs that between 4 and 12 days after a state of national civil emergency like nuclear war, they could trade with the gangs that would control every city.
When was that, Bill, that you encountered that?
That was in 1997.
But that's all still in force?
Oh yeah,
You
all
feel?
those things. Their COG, which was set up by George Bush Sr., it even made it even more serious. So that COG plan and all those things have been done going back, like over grades, going back since Eisenhower.
Okay.
They've been doing this for a long time, and it's not just in America. You have to understand these plans are replicated in one form or another in Canada, in Britain, in Australia, in African nations, in China. They have policies. There's over 4,000 underground facilities around the world alone, and in America, 2 giant facilities besides the little ones that are a mile and a half to 4 miles down. I mean, they've been going crazy, and most of the illegal money is drug money coming from illegal sale of heroin and cocaine, OxyContin, ecstasy, etc. $750 billion into weird projects.
Yeah.
And again, they're addicted to this. They're addicted to money that doesn't under the scrutiny of the Congress or Senate. And I don't think if either party is elected, they're going to steer us away from this. We have to get away from thinking the political system is going to solve this. It's not. Or the religious. You know, a lot of people think if they just go and pray a whole lot in church, whatever church they belong to, they're crazy.
Yep.
They need to start taking action. We mean action to the street, to their neighbors, and they need to say, hey, I don't want to participate in the winding down of civilization.
Yep.
Because they need to see that this is the first stage here. This is the devolution of the economy. And the next stage after the devolution of the economy and release of a pandemic or martial law, and it won't just be in America, is the hard chipping of the population, forced vaccination, pandemic, and the hard kill is going to start. And I'm talking about hard kill, where they're going to kind of kill 90% of human beings on the planet with either pandemics, injected viruses, lethal weapon systems, or whatever, starvation, just because of economic chaos. And people say, oh no, they wouldn't do that. I have contacts inside the Canadian and U.S. government that have said if there was a total breakdown of society for 30 days, half the population of Canada and the same in the States would be dead from violence. Not from a pandemic, from violence.
Yep. People will do it themselves.
Yeah,
Yep.
the violence would be like, just take a city, like let's say you hit a city like Los Angeles and took out 20 blocks with a 10 kiloton nuclear weapon with a population kill, let's say 200,000. And California devolved into a state where there's no trucks going anywhere with any food. And this is a place where it's a breadbasket. This state would be a seething cauldron of death, and half the population would probably be dead within 30 days, just because of the roving gangs shooting each other out and trying to grab food that was left and getting trucks and whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
It would be
Got it.
insane.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
It would make
So-
Road Warrior look like a party. And
Yeah.
people say, oh no, it couldn't get that bad. I said, the guys that told me were special forces that worked at the Federal Center that told me this. And they shocked me back in '97 when they told me this stuff.
Yeah. And all of this is being modeled as well.
Yeah, so I
going
tell
right back
people
to what
they
was done.
got to start preparing for disaster. And then it'll come back out of that, because when they bring it out, the next thing is, oh, that wasn't too bad. It was only 2 weeks of martial law, or 6 weeks. And
Yeah. And that's just to
only
get
so
people
many thousand-
acclimatized to the idea.
Oh, just
Right.
like Katrina. You know,
Yeah.
we let the people in Katrina now live in dead, trailers that would ruin their health, or they have homes that are still loaded with mold that are killing them, right? Or we let them federalize parts of the country that's totally against the Constitution, right? They're still federalized. The city of Detroit's federalized, the city of New Orleans. This is a violation of federal and state law. What are they doing? They're eventually going to federalize the whole country, because they've been grade by grade running martial law and admiralty law parallel with the Constitution. Eventually they're just going to get rid of that, in George Bush Jr.'s terms, that GD piece of paper. They're just going to throw it away and say, guess what, guys? We got enough executive orders. We got enough Blackwater Security Worldwide, which are the Rothschilds' private army, right? And we're going to take you on.
Yeah.
Okay? So people need to grasp that. And if they need to be prepared for things, they need to be able to stand up. And if they don't stand up, well,
Is it possible that some of the white hats in intel and military will stand up themselves?
they are already. I've already got contacts that have told me, like William Fallon, it was public. He said, not on my watch will you start a war against Iran. They fired him.
Yep.
They put 2 people of Jewish descent in there that are willing to take orders, that are willing to attack Iran.
Sure.
Twice in the last year and a half, the Israelis tried to go downtown. The last time was around June 24th, when the American government allowed 100 Israeli jets to do air maneuvers on a war game over Iraqi airspace, and the Russians detected it with their satellite-based imaging, and started to scramble transfer codes for the launch codes for their submarine-launched nuclear missiles and their bear bombers heading toward North America. People don't know, we were moments away from a thermonuclear
We heard about
exchange
that. We heard about
in
that.
June. I mean, most people say,
that's
oh,
right.
that doesn't happen. You people are crazy. I said, well, I got contacts. I went
Yep.
back weeks later and verified it from my sources.
Yep.
And so people say, oh, that can't happen. You've just got a really good imagination. I said, I wish. I mean, this is a damned nightmare.
Yeah.
And it's really happening. But I'm brave enough to say it because I know there's no alternative. If I don't speak out against this, you can't move far enough away. You can't move to the South Island of New Zealand and think you're going to be safe, or Paraguay. There's nowhere on this planet you can move away from this without it eventually taking you if you don't stand up to this evil. So if I have any messages, prepare for disaster. Speak out now, because you're going to be silenced very shortly. And believe me, they won't be able to silence your blood-curdling screams if you're hauled away in a black op truck in the middle of the night, or a rail car with the shackles grinding into your ankles and your wrists as you're screaming because you know you're going away to the death chambers. Okay? Because it really is getting prepared. They're getting prepared. They've been shipped in the plastic coffins. They got the rail cars. They got the incineration stations already. They got everything ready. And people say, oh, it doesn't exist. I say, well, my condolences to you, because if you want to attack me and say that I'm a crackerjack because I give all these spiritual and other things, you're going to suffer, and then you're going to die. And you're not just going to die of physical death, you're going to die of spiritual death.
Yep. Yep. And one of the reasons why you die of spiritual death is because you never stood up when you could have done.
Right. The greatest sins are the sins of silence in the face of evil.
Yes, we second
Absolutely.
that. We second
Yeah.
that.
Okay, we second that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Bill, thank you so much.